Hello, audience members, and welcome to Too Cool for Anime Club. I'm one of your co-hosts, Eric Zavinski, and I'm here joined with
Maureen Crowley from Long Shot Books.
And we also have our producer in the studio. Hello, producer.
Todd Crawford.
So we wanted to have a platform, Maureen and I, to talk about some of the more weeb-esque topics, some of the more animated topics, some stuff that Todd hasn't seen, and that we're not going to force Todd to see yet. That might be the goal of the show. Basically just to talk about some of the shows and some of the nerdy things that Maureen and I have a lot in common with, but maybe Todd not so much. So welcome to the spinoff. If you listen to the end of the Death Note episode of Too Cool for the Comic Shop, you will have prepared for this. So Maureen, what are we talking about in this episode?
Today we are discussing anime My Hero Academia, seasons 1 through 4, because I guess the newest season has just come out.
Yes, I believe season 5 is just getting a few episodes here. We're recording in April 2021. And I usually watch this show once the full next season of the dub is out, because I'm a healthy dub watcher. That being said, you and I have both seen all 4 seasons of the anime preceding the current season, and I've actually seen both movies, both of the films. I'm not sure if you have as well, but that's the extent of my knowledge.
I have not. I haven't seen or gotten too far into like the manga or anything yet.
Yes, that must be said. I have zero manga knowledge as well.
Well,
Yes.
can I guess the conceit of the show?
Yeah, please.
Because I truly know nothing about it. I've seen it on shelves. I've seen the manga and the DVDs or whatever, but that's all I know about it. And I'm assuming that it's some kind of school, kind of like I think Naruto is, where they're training to be heroes of some sort. Like Naruto, they're training to be ninjas and Naruto men and shit. And in this, they're training to be some kind of hero. So it's like Harry Potter, but maybe not superheroes, but like vigilantes or something.
You're pretty much on the money, Todd. They are training to be superheroes, actually. So it is that much a high school anime, but also a superhero anime.
All right, well, that was Too Cool for the Anime Club. Come back in a few weeks. And
Yeah, see you guys next week and everything. And
Yeah, no, it was a good in-depth look into the show and everything that's been going on for 90 episodes.
right. No, but for real though, the show is about follows, I guess, Izuku Midoriya. He is living in a society where people have these like superhuman abilities, are born with these abilities called like quirks and everything. It could be like anything from being able to float small objects to being able to cast fireballs, whatever it is.
they can turn their eyelids inside out.
What?
They can flip their eyelids so it's inside out for a little bit.
Yeah.
Oh boy.
Oh, please no. Oh, no. It's not power, it's just awful. Gosh, but yeah, he's a kid who's born without any kind of like quirks and stuff, but he's still intent on becoming like a superhero, like his idol All Might. And it sort of follows like his journey into becoming that kind of hero. And like you said, Todd, there's stuff about a school and training and pretty badass music montages and junk like that. It's pretty great. So I guess, Eric, do you want to start with season 1?
Yeah, just going into the premise of the show a little bit further first is really kind of an amalgamation of, I think, paying homage to a lot of golden and silver era comic books. This show's a very optimistic, very kind of cheesy in its tone and its setting, and it's very much a show that believes in kind of like the ideal heroics and a lot of things like that, and that's basically kind of the vibe that it gives off. It's not really an edgy kind of superhero anti-hero vigilante thing that a lot of superhero media has been pursuing in the past decade or so or more. I think it's kind of refreshing, and it's some of the best superhero content that I've watched over the past decade. We've had a lot of it, so I mean, that's really what the show is going for. Marine, do you have any other broad stroke description on how to sell Todd on the show?
Yeah, I guess what I love about it is just so positive and so wholesome in a lot of ways. Like I mean, there's so like people die and stuff, but it's not like what you were saying, more negative light, like The Boys and different shows like that sort of portray the more negative and cynical side of like heroism. Like this is more going for that like idealistic and pure side of what it means to be a hero and the pursuit of that. And I really appreciate like all the positivity they're going for.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And the show begins very much in that mode, where the main character, already without powers, is trying to save actually one of his peers and what will be one of his future rivals from a disaster. And basically, this number one superhero sees that act of selflessness. And I don't know if you've ever seen Avatar: The Last Airbender, but it's kind of similar in a way, whereas this number one superhero has to pass down his powers to a new generation. So he chooses this kid who has no superpowers to get his superpowers. But it's not that easy. And he has to train to even use like 1% of his mentor's powers. So that's basically how the show starts. And we're still very much in the middle of pursuing that arc. 4 seasons in, the main character, spoilers, doesn't have full control of this big guy's superhero powers. So that's basically the premise that is the connecting thread of all the characters and all of the things going on in the show.
Right. No, exactly. And you kind of learn as he inherits his power, like what I'm impressed by is like how he doesn't master it, of course, right away or anything like that. There's so much that goes into like the physical aspects of being, a hero and all the training he has to undergo. And even like when he enrolls in like UA and everything, he starts. Another aspect of the show, at least with season 1, is him trying to pass the entrance exams to get into like one of the best schools in the country for hero training. And the different one of the arcs in the show is like the different struggles between the 4 different, I guess, departments, like the general studies and the business class and like class 1A, like the hero class thing. And it's really interesting to see that get set up in season 1.
Yes, it's very much entrenched in like the way the school works, and very much only really introducing the surface level of the villains in season 1. I also believe season 1 is like half the length of like any of the future seasons. I remember it being pretty short. So it's really kind of an introductory piece that's like honestly 3 or 4 hours long, because there's that few episodes in season 1, I believe.
Yeah, because I think they're each like 20 minutes or so, like if that. I mean, and
right.
Yeah, and to be honest, like this is something like Dylan and I were actually talking about earlier today. Like, I don't know if you've noticed this, but I've noticed this quite a bit, at least with My Hero Academia. I think of all the animes I've seen, like this one has done it the most, but it does a lot of like flashbacks, but not just flashbacks of like prior episodes, but several flashbacks within the same episode. Of like,
yes. And the show continues to do stuff like that quite a bit. That is actually one of my gripes with the show, is I feel like it's a little bit too kind of like soap opera heavy on flashbacks, to the point where it's like, okay, I've been watching the show, I know what happened. I find myself saying that a lot actually in this show.
Right. It drives me crazy because like, Bakugo or somebody, like some character will say something and then they'll just like legitimately, we timed it. It was like less than 3 minutes later, they're just already replaying it.
Yes, that happens a lot, and I can imagine. I haven't rewatched the show. I've only been, watching it once through. I can imagine that gets even more annoying in the future. Even season 4 did that a lot, especially with a particular scene of somebody warning All Might about what's going to happen in the future. And I think it played like every episode for 10 episodes in a row, and it was kind of insane.
Yeah,
I think mechanically they do these flashbacks to try to save on like money and animation time. I must imagine there's got to be a reason for it.
Yeah. Dylan was saying something very similar, which I hadn't even considered. I kind of considered it like a form of filler to like, fluff out the episodes a little bit. And I know he made a very good point saying, well, it is all important information. I'm like, yeah, but it's still filler. I don't know. I think just like anime and filler stuff just seems to go hand in hand a lot. I don't know if that's like a common trope in anime, but I've just seen like, like we've all heard of like the filler episode and everything like that. And see, they take it a step further. They're like a filler within a filler. It's
right.
And it seems like, the first the first episode of each season after season 1 just seems to be like an entire episode dedicating to recapping the season prior, which is interesting. But I mean, right. I guess you do need that, especially since I think the airings between seasons are like a year apart or something like that. Which does make sense, but to be honest, I binge watched like all of this.
No, right? Yeah, no, I think it's kind of a necessary evil for a first episode of a new season, but the show goes beyond that more and more. Now, I guess there really aren't too many things that I have to say about season 1 because of all the seasons of the show, it's probably the most by the books of anything that we've seen so far. I think the most interesting thing about season 1 is just that it introduces like 30 characters who will be important forever, or at least so far, through 4 seasons. All of the classmates, all of the teachers. It does a lot of groundwork in introducing characters. So I was wondering, do you have a favorite character or favorite couple characters, Maureen?
Oh, that's hard. I do like Bakugo. I just think it's funny that he's just like this. Like he and like Deku's relationship is pretty complicated, but I like his character because he seems like he's so easily going to be the bad guy, and he's like such a bully character. But as you see, like later on through the series, it's totally not that way at all, and he actually goes through some, probably to me, like the most interesting growth in this series so far. And I also really like Ida just because he's intense. he's just,
right.
He's just hysterical. How about you?
So Todd, to bring you up to speed, Bakugo is basically the Pokemon trainer rival character. If that helps you out.
Isn't Bakugan? Doesn't he have a spin-off show?
No, you're right. He does have a spin-off show. He explodes little balls that turn into monsters, I think.
Okay, my brother played with him when he was a kid.
Okay, that's good. That's good to know. Yeah, that's a prequel show, actually.
Oh, my bad.
But yeah, Bakugo, he sweats kind of napalm, I guess, explosives, so he can explode things with his hands. That's his superpower. It's
kind of like in Infinite Jest, there's this ghost in, I think it's a sauna of a tennis academy. And it goes to a former teacher, I believe. It's been about 5-6 years since I read it. And I think that once the kids start to sweat, he licks their sweat off their body.
Interesting.
Messing with me or not?
I mean, it's been a while. My memory's a little bit hazy on that part. It's not a huge part of the book, but it stands out.
There was no licking. Well, actually, I was going to say there's no licking in My Hero Academia. That is actually false. There are characters who definitely do some licking, but not that character. So I guess to go back to the favorite characters question, favorite characters have changed throughout the show. I don't think I was like super strong on anyone in particular in season 1. I actually really hated Bakugo for the first 2 seasons of this show, and I didn't really see his value until season 3, but we'll get to that the future. Honestly, I'm kind of a sucker for protagonists, which is very lame and boring, but I think Deku has definitely become rightfully my favorite character, but it definitely takes a while for him to get to that point. And All Might is always hilarious, and everything that he says in his line delivery is very good. Todd, the All Might character, he basically switches between being super macho Superman, just very cartoonish in his delivery and everything, but he can't maintain his powers for story related reasons 100% of the time because he's been injured in the past. So then he transforms down to like a complete dweeb middle-aged man who sounds very tired all of the time. And that's a trope with that character that always makes me laugh.
Well, that's sad.
It is played for mostly humor, but it can be very sad.
Yeah. Can I tell you who my least favorite character is?
I'm wondering if we have the same least favorite characters, so yes.
Mineta.
Absolutely. Mineta is my least favorite character and I think anything ever. So
he's creepy and perverted. He's like that kind of like tropey, like really weird, creepy pervert character. He's just like
very horny child for women. Very much a loser in every regard, has a very annoying voice, and his superpower is that he has sticky purple balls on his head that he can detach and use to stick to places.
Yeah, and I don't know, I'm just not a huge fan of his character because I feel like with a lot of it, the events of like most of the series could probably be fine without him being involved, but I do know that he has had like one good moment, especially I think it was like in the probably season 1 where he was sort of doubting his ability to be a hero and how he even got into class like 1A and everything. And I'm like, well, that's interesting, especially like given, you know, his abilities and whatnot. But overall, I'm just like, I don't know. It's just like they don't do a whole lot with him. And I'm just like, weird pervert character. I'm like, there's only so far, maybe, I don't know. There's only just so far that can take me.
Right. And I think a show like this, it's really impossible not to have the problem of, you know, I think there are 24 students in Class 1A, and we know all of them and all of their names and all of their superpowers, and they all get screen time to some extent at least. Right. And I think part of the problem there is you can't really make a lot of those characters more than one note gags because there just isn't time to get to know them. The show has gotten better at that over the years because we've had more runtime to get to know some of them. But I think there are a few characters, specifically including him, that I don't know if they will ever shake out of their one-dimensional joke character form, if that makes any sense.
Yeah, no, I can see that. I mean, I can see like some characters at least growing. I mean, even when you think about shows like for instance Avatar that we talk about often, like with such a large cast of characters that show has, like I would say most of them in some capacity, even some of like the minor characters who are around for a handful of episodes, people like Jet and like his friends and whatnot, like they're all pretty well fleshed out. So it's like I don't know, I think maybe as time goes on you see them more, like you said, like it'll get better, but I don't know.
Right. I think the difference there is really that Avatar sprinkles characters throughout the show and you introduce yourself to them across the show, whereas My Hero Academia season 1 is very much like, here's all the characters right off the bat in the first like 10 episodes.
Yes, it's
to
like
know them all, which a lot of shows don't do that, obviously.
Yes, it's like a more wholesome version of The Godfather where you're like, I need a pen to keep track of everybody.
Yeah, right. That's pretty much the case. I mean, honestly, everything that happens in the show is so grand after season 1. It's actually kind of hard to remember the plot of season 1 because I'm pretty sure it's just training, getting inducted into the class, and then they fight some like mutant.
The Nomus.
The Nomus, yeah. But they aren't really characters, so like they don't really stick around. They do to some plot extent, but not the actual villains of the show. So it's kind of like just an early way to set up stakes, more or less.
Oh yeah, I agree. I think it's mostly just like a setup season, and I mean there are a couple of things I do appreciate about like season 1, namely being how destructive All for One, like, or sorry, One for All. I get them mixed up. But One for All is.
And me too.
Oh gosh, I even wrote it down like just to make sure I didn't mess it up, and I still did. But I like with All Might's power that he passes down, like how destructive it is, and just how dangerous it can be, especially for someone who like Deku really hasn't had any kind of like superhero training experience. He was essentially like quirkless. It's not like it's someone like, you know, Bakugo's who has experience with like having this kind of like foreign power to him. But and it's neat to see him like still throughout the show not entirely fully master it yet, and he's still trying to learn like his signature move and how it affects him mentally and physically, and how like the people around him are kind of like slowly catching on to like, where did this power come from? You essentially had nothing before, and all of a sudden it's here. And but yeah, for me that was like my absolute favorite thing about season one, is seeing that he didn't like master it by the end of the season or anything like that, and then everything else goes on, but it's just a continuous process.
Absolutely. If anything, season 1 makes me feel like, wow, there's going to be many, many seasons of this show, because he doesn't have his shit together like at all yet. So
right. But for me, no, sorry.
Oh, go ahead.
I was just gonna say, for me, things really started picking up around like season 2, because that was like the whole sports festival kind of thing, like where you really get to see more of UA and the different branches or different class sections of the school, like the, you know, the hero class, which is class 1A, like the general studies, which is like, you know, B, and then the business folks and the support courses. And it's really cool because they each seem like you get to see more of that, and you get to see the rivalry between like the hero class and the general study people, and how much they just really don't like each other. But you can see how like the business course, like, yes, you don't really consider it like heroism, but like you still, like in a conventional sense, but you can kind of see like how their end of it applies to like the superhero industry, because essentially in the society that they're living in, like the heroes like graduate from these schools and go and join superhero agencies, and then they work as employment, you know, for their employment they work using their quirks either as like heroes, or they use it like creating different like technologies or different like business applications, medical field application. And it's very neat to sort of see how it changes their society. But
absolutely, like there's no Spider-Man having to take pictures to for rent in this world.
right.
Which I think is interesting, and they keep exploring the world building more as the show goes on, and how that all works. In season 4, they brought some of those characters back that we were introduced to in season 2, which is nice. But yeah, season 2 is, I think, most famous for its kind of like tournament arc, which a lot of anime, Dragon Ball, have those kinds of storylines where just pitting characters against each other, kind of for the sake of showing off their abilities. But season 2 is not really filler, because it really gets into the backstories of a lot of characters, especially Fire Ice Boy. Can't remember his name right now.
Yes.
Todoroki. Yes.
Yes. And I know it goes into like one of my favorite parts of the tournament was in when Midoriya was fighting the question guy. Oh gosh, Shinzo, the one where, you know, he approaches you, you ask him a question, then he like has you frozen until, you know, he lets you go. Like their fight, right. You can kind of tell like him and his like background. He's like insecure about his like quirk and everything, and he wants to be a hero very badly, but he's just like, what use is my power? And then like towards the end of that fight, when he, you know, spoiler, like, you know, loses the fight against Deku and everything, you hear like he gets validation from like 2 heroes saying, oh, that would be a really useful power, we should keep an eye on this guy. I'm like, yes. I'm like, good for him. I like this guy. I want to see him again, but he's actually cool as hell. But
yeah, they get to do a lot of cool things and really get this, let the characters shine in season 2 through this arc that they basically were just introduced shortly in season 1 before.
Oh yeah, and overall there's like a lot of like really fun episodes, like their whole like cavalry battle, like where they're all like working together to I guess like what, steal each other's like flags and like get points and everything, like a weird capture the flag kind of thing. Like that was pretty fun. And I would say for me, out of all the episodes, I'd say, or all the seasons, like this one definitely had the most fun episodes for me. that did a lot for me. They were just kind of like silly, but they're still on plot, and it was very cool.
Yeah, no, I can definitely agree with that. Season 3 kind of ramps things up and things get darker in the story department. So I think season 2 is really good for that. And it's the first full length season. So I think season 2 is really kind of the show hits its stride and you kind of get a sense of what it's all about.
Oh, yeah. And you get like introduced to like that hero killer, Dane, and like his whole like how he hates heroes philosophy and how that kind of fuels like the League of Villains and how it inspires a lot of people, like his actions. Like he's basically Todd, just so you know, he's basically a pretty bad dude. Like he's going around like slaying like heroes who work for agencies, and he's he's just basically just a hitman. Only he just kills heroes, and a lot of villains are inspired by that and decide to join like the League of Villains, which is like the main bad guy entity group of the show.
Yes, the Legion of Doom.
Yes, Doom Legion. And you kind of get a sense of like his toxic ideology and how a lot of people, even like in society, just kind of feel that way. It's really scary and kind of sad to see. I would say it's probably like, to me, like probably the least wholesome aspect. It kind of like leads the series down to like a slightly dark turn, but it still maintains like it's happening, which like with the series as a whole, like it does have discuss some pretty like dark stuff, but it still overall stays, you know, pretty optimistic, which I think is really cool to see, because it's not like, you know, a show like The Boys where it's just like pure cynicism the entire time. Like maybe there's a joke here and there, but overall the tone's like darker than like a DC, you know, filter kind of dark.
Right. I mean, you always are in the perspective of the main characters and the students. Mm-hmm. And kind of an ongoing theme of the show is that some of these kids are better heroes than some of these adults. They aren't, you know, corrupted yet in any way. They're unfettered and they're innocent, and they just really strongly believe in themselves and have really good teachers that help them believe in themselves, which is all really cute and cheesy, but it's really effective. And I think as the show gets darker, those moments of like easiness and optimism are even better because they're contrasted against like the harsh reality of how sucky the world can be.
You're right, because I think in this season we really get into Todoroki's backstory, like with his whole, because his dad is Endeavor, which is the number 2 hero. Like All Might's the number 1 hero, and his dad Endeavor's like number 2, and you kind of realize like, wow, you're kind of a jerk. He's kind of a terrible person, and you kind of get into his like backstory in his life, and yet you kind of see how he turned, because his power, basically, he's just like icy hot guy, and you know he has like one side of him that's just the ice side, the other side that's like the fire side, and his which he gets from like his dad, who's like the fire side, and his mom has like the ice quirk, and kind of like this like teenage angst where you're like, I'm not using my fire side because I hate you, Dad. And I'm like, but when you kind of look into his backstory, you're like, wow, that's kind of a valid reason why you don't like your dad.
Oh yeah,
and also as like a more lighthearted mood, I really like Tetsu and Kirishima, like how they become like bros. They're like, we're not the same, we don't have the same power. You know how like they're both basically just like super strong, like rock solid. You can like punch them and they'll be fine. Kind of like they end up like hating each other at first, but then they become bros, and their bromance is like one of my favorite parts of the show.
Yeah, no, they also do some of the internships, I think, in this season as well.
Yes.
I think Frog Lady goes with Seal Man for like a really funny, hilarious episode at one point.
Yes. Yeah, that was just kind of like, it was kind of filler, but it was very fun. That was gosh, I can't remember her name now.
I think her name's Sue.
Yeah, Asui.
Yeah.
Like, thank you, Wikipedia. I wrote it down. But
good job. You came more prepared than me. Yeah, but that really just goes to your point about how this season probably had the most fun episodes overall, and it's just kind of exploring a new fun idea with a lot of the episodes. There are some other fun segments of the show that kind of focus on the same idea for like 6 episodes. Season 4. Season 2 just kind of jumps from fun idea to fun idea, so it doesn't feel like it's dragging.
Yeah. I will say there is a star moment for me, and that's above like the bromance that develops in the show. But when they go into picking their hero names, I like how Bakugo's just like Fire Death Man. All of his movies are just like, or all of his name choices are just like fire and death and just morbidness, and it's just so funny. And Midoriya chooses like Deku, which I guess from my understanding translates to like nothing or no one or anything like that. And he's just sort of taking on this name that means literally nothing and trying to repurpose it and reclaim it into something like positive and good. And I really like that. And I really like sort of seeing something I didn't really get to talk about too much like earlier, but the relationship between Deku and Bakugo, because they are childhood friends and they end up in like the same class and going to the same school together. And but Bakugo is always just so mean to Deku. The Deku's just always so kind and just wants to be friends with him. And Dylan made this really good point like earlier today. He said that Bakugo sees Deku as a rival and wants him to be like someone he can compete against and someone who he's actually afraid of surpassing him. But Deku doesn't see him that way at all, and I think that's one of the reasons why Bakugo just really is so mean to Deku, because he just wants something out of him like that, but he's just not getting it. But yet he's still afraid of being surpassed, and he's very insecure.
Right, it's a very unrequited relationship in that regard.
Yeah, right.
Yeah, one of the films actually kind of explores their relationship more because season 4 didn't explore it a whole lot. So it was the second movie. I think it's the one was called Two Heroes and one was called like Heroes United. The titles aren't the most memorable. Both movies are pretty good. I think the first movie is in between seasons 2 and 3, but the second movie is in between seasons 3 and 4 and kind of explores that dynamic a bit more. Just a lot of fun. Definitely recommend it.
Right, yeah. No, I definitely will. And I think that's about all I could think of for season 2, the most memorable things. I know a lot of like Ida's arc, trying to avenge his like brother who was attacked by Stain, and like a lot of his stuff was pretty dark, but pretty compelling for his character, considering that he's such a stickler for like rules and order and everything. And then he goes on this total like vengeance mission, which is very interesting. It's interesting to sort of like play with opposites of a character,
right?
Like two compelling forces where you're like, someone who's very adhering to the rules, very obedient and compliant, completely goes off the rails. And it's like, at what point are you pushed into just abandoning the things that you like hold dear, or the things that you hold in a very high regard, and how there's so much pressure on him to perform, pressure on him to carry on the family, and despite like personal tragedy and everything, he just like goes completely like puts the blinders on and basically just flows through the season, and how it just really messes him up, because at the end of the day he is still just a kid. He seems so adult-like because of like the way he acts, but at the end of the day he is just a kid. He was trying to take down like a straight up villain, and then you kind of forget that sometimes because you're so busy like rooting for them, and you're like, oh wait, like these are still just kids that are going up against these villains, and you're almost like completely scared for them, especially in like when you get into like season 3 and season 4. I mean, even in season 1 when they were just first students doing their first training exercise, like they get attacked by a bunch of like legitimate villains. You're like, holy crap. Like that escalated quickly, and it's very intense right off the bat.
Yeah, exactly. And I think that's something that the show has, kind of an element of danger that other superhero stuff doesn't. Usually our superheroes are young adults, or they're grown up, or they're in their own. And the show is obviously, the point is that that's not the case. And obviously that changes as things go on. They're in high school and they're progressing through the years. I'm not sure if they're like technically sophomores or juniors at the moment or something like that, if the equivalent of that applies. but you get to see them, do work studies and get a little bit more into the field as things go along, which I think is fun. And it's kind of like a very unique thing to kind of have the high school to college to career work study internship, all of those things, that model of like normal society applied to superhero stuff. I don't know of anything else that's done it, and they really use that to its advantage in the show.
Yeah, I was gonna say I can't think of anything that draws like a parallel to something like that, but yeah, it's interesting to see like the mechanics and, like you said, the world building of like, okay, what if, what would the economic system be like if all these people had quirks and everything like that? What is the social system like with the people who don't have quirks versus the people who have them? Kind of like in Korra, I think it was like, was it season 1? When they were talking about like the benders versus non-benders kind of thing. Like it kind of draws that kind of like neat parallel.
Right.
Yeah. And it's interesting to see like what the possibilities are like. But it's not like, straight up morbid like, other comics, movies, anything like that. It's still, like you said, it plays around with like the fun like golden age, silver age of like comics and everything, and it's very wholesome, very good. And I guess if you're cool, I'm gonna move on to like season 3, because this is like that whole forest lodge trip with like the the pussycats and all that fun stuff that occurs.
Yes. And some weird stuff happens in the first few episodes.
Yeah, and honestly, like this is like my favorite season of Bakugo, and yeah, towards the end you kind of like know why, but at least for me, this season really got deep into the definition of like heroism.
Yes, and definitely the expectations that the characters have. Right. Certain things happen in this season that really up the stakes and kind of bring them up to like world-ending societal levels.
Right.
And, you kind of get to that stuff in the middle of the season. It's just kind of, it feels like the end of a series for a season, like, and it just kind of creeps up on you unexpectedly. At least it did for me.
Right. No, I feel the same. And I know it starts off with them going to that summer camp place, and they're just doing some summer training and all that fun jazz, and training starts sooner than they expected, and they meet this kid. His name is Koda, I believe, and he like has an intense hatred for heroes. His heart's completely like hardened to the aspect of heroes because he went through like because like both his parents were heroes and they died the line of duty, and then he's just like, I don't know why people want to be heroes, like this is stupid, this is dumb. And Deku spends like the first like half of the season trying to change this kid's mind, and it's very interesting to see like one of his biggest weaknesses as a character, and also his biggest strengths, is his ability to or his predisposition to not want to give up on anybody and not leave anybody behind. And you see a lot of this in like season 4, season 4, where he just like pinpoints and just really fixates on trying to change a person, and like not only like save them physically, but being there for them emotionally. I think that's really interesting for his character, because I haven't really seen any other characters in the show kind of do that the way he does, and I think that's what makes him really unique. Because this entire time so far in like seasons 1 and 2, he's trying to master like All Might's power, a power that was given to him and bestowed upon him, which didn't originate from him. And at least for me, he's trying to design like a signature move, like most for a good portion of season 3, and he's trying to do it to me the way All Might would do it. It's like, what would All Might do? And it's like, no, what would I do with this power? Taking this power and like really claiming it as yours. And I think that and his definition of heroism, and it's a really neat kind of way to see how he comes into it.
Absolutely. The show is all about just kind of making him come into his own instead of trying to aspire to be something that's already been pre-established. And
right.
He doesn't easily give up on people. That's kind of evident both with this kid, but then also when Bakugo later gets in trouble, Deku is very important to trying to get him back, but obviously things blow up into a larger proportion, with the real heroes having to come in to save the day from big mastermind villain, all for one, and one for all. Yes, I always mix that up too. I have to think about it.
I know, I get you, but so I do want to talk more about like Bakugo now that you're mentioning it. Like, you know, when they go to camp, like the villains show up again because they apparently know where everyone's at all times. But I know through his, like, I guess through everything that aspired and went down at the camp, like their actual target, they're trying to get like Bakugo. Try not to spoil it too much, but I guess, are we doing spoiler alerts here? Not spoil. I don't know. I feel like anybody who's
spoilers.
All right, cool. I feel like anybody who's watching this, like outside of or listening to this, like are probably people who are fans of the show already. But so anybody who is listening and does not know,
right? Screw you, Todd.
But whatever, like with his character, like the League of Villains is trying to recruit him to joining them, saying join. And my favorite thing about this whole season is this moment with Baku, because the writers of the show could have easily taken like the low-hanging fruit and because they set him up to be a bully and kind of like a jerk and kind of like the potential villainous type, because like even like when he was picking his own name, he's like like fire, murder, man, it was always like fire, murder, death, kill, and those were all his names. He's like a kid, a young boy, it's whatever, they're just being silly. But they easily could have pegged him and saying, yes, I could cross over and become that villain. But no, he's still committed to being a hero. And I think that's great, that it totally like subverted like all expectations for his character, and that he's still, and I truly believe that he will become a hero. It's just he's going to do it in his own way. And I really just loved that about his arc.
Absolutely. In season 3, especially in those moments where villains are like interrogating him and trying to pressure him, when he finally stands up, for wanting to be a hero, and then some of the stuff with Deku later on in the season is actually is taking a stand and not just like yelling and being belligerent. Because before the season, he kind of felt one note to me in that regard. But they definitely put a lot of effort into giving him some complexity. And he's very much holding the burden of being captured and getting a lot of these heroes into trouble through them trying to save him. He's not holding that very well either. So he's got like a soft, gooey center underneath the exterior.
Oh yeah, he's like one of those like Tootsie Roll suckers thing. I don't know. I was trying to make a joke, or like a blow
Tootsie
pop.
Pop.
Yeah. But
probably the Tootsie Pop quirk out there, I must imagine. Very, very useful one time.
Oh my god. But yeah, with his character, I really like that, he does feel bad. He does feel like really guilty and really terrible about like the heroes having to come in and save him, and he guilt trips himself for like a very long time. And I think like his whole conflict, like inner conflict of, not taking the low-hanging fruit of turning over to the villain side, even though that's literally like what most people would expect of him, and be his whole like remorse and like guilt track. Like you said, he's soft, gooey center inside is like kind of what solidifies him as being like one of my favorite characters, because he's like so insecure about like being surpassed, and he wants to be like the number one hero, the best. His main motivator is to win, and I think he's very competitive spirit, and I think that's a really compelling motivation for someone like him, and I think that's what makes him a really great character. And I enjoy like everything of his, and I think it's only going to get better from here for him. And like I said before, I really truly believe he will become a great hero, but again, it really in his own way. And I think that's a lot of it with a lot of these characters, like even with like Deku, who inherited power. I think instead of trying to build upon and be, what came before, and try to revive and honor this sort of tradition of what came before, like really just growing into yourself and being that kind of, I guess, expressing that kind of like originality hairless. I don't know where I'm going with this, but you get what I'm saying. You pick up what I'm putting down.
Absolutely. And I think that's really cool that they can say that the motivation, might not be pure selflessness like it is for Deku, and is that competitive edge, but that doesn't make him a bad person, and it doesn't make any of the other characters with different motivations bad people either. So like you said, they could have gone a more predictable cliche route with the character and the rival, but they don't do that, which is very nice.
Very nice. Very nice. And I think, season 3 just kind of concluded with a lot of like Bakugo's like guilt and All Might kind of leaning more into the educational aspect of his hero career at this point, and them all kind of everyone's like on high alert now, like with the League of villains and all this like craziness that has just happened, and especially after the fight, like the world just kind of lost its symbol for peace. And that for Bakugo, like the weight of feeling responsible for like, destroying, quote unquote, destroying the symbol of, and I think that's also like a big part of, season 4 is just trying to determine who's going to be that next symbol. But so moving on, season 4, would you like to describe the fever dream of season 4?
Yeah, the season 4 definitely had some challenge it was putting on itself, because season 3 very much kind of felt like an end to an era of a show. Number one, big guy hero Todd, he's not able to do his job anymore. He's out of commission because he fought big time villains in prison. You have a bunch of little time villains doing a bunch of other shit. I honestly never really liked a lot of the League of Villain characters. I mean, I thought that they were fun, but in terms of being well written, I thought that they were very weak in comparison to a lot of the heroes, which is why season 4 very much intrigued me with Kitsuki, I think is his name, because he was my favorite villain in the show, at least as it continued to play out for the first half of season 4. All of a sudden he's very threatening. It's very much like the next generation of the Japanese Yakuza, and is kind of taking over the villains for his own means. So basically the show gets sidetracked and you're not spending time with like the main villains. You're spending time with this new guy. But I like this new guy way more. So basically the first half of the season is Deku and several other different characters, some of which are brand new to us. Basically a heist and trying to save one little girl, because this girl has a power that can basically reverse superpowers and make people have Spider-Man 2 Tobey Maguire erectile dysfunction, which is very, very influential in this world where most people have superpowers.
That's better than Infinity War Hulk erectile dysfunction.
Oh my gosh.
It's not that kind of erectile dysfunction.
Yeah, I've been thinking about Infinity War quite a bit lately, and I like that movie a lot, but I forgot about the Hulk stuff until just now, and that part of the movie really sucks. But I like most of the rest of the movie. It's like 95% a really good movie and 5% a typical Marvel movie.
I mean, you can't have 100% awesome lovemaking all the time. You have to have some room for erectile dysfunction.
No, otherwise they'd have to call it Zack Snyder's Infinity War.
Jesus. But yeah, did I at least explain?
You cut out for me.
Maureen, did I explain the first half of season 4 well?
Yes, you done good, Hasselhoff. You done good. Because like the first half is just them going on this like mission, and then because you introduce like, speaking of like Marvel movies, like you have like Sir Night-Eye, who's kind of like the Doctor Strange of the first half of the season, who's just like, I can see into the future, infinite possibilities, and we don't win. And then like you reach halfway through and you're like, they do win. And it's kind of interesting. It's fun. Like, I will say that aspect, it is kind of fun. But because it's always interesting when you have a character who sees like prophecies and like outcomes and is kind of like clairvoyant in that regard, and then they're like, we don't win, and then you have all these characters where you're like, well, fuck that.
Right, and I will say that he's still correct. Basically, the one little girl's quirk kind of supersedes his quirk because it like essentially turns back time and rewinds things. So I think in any other circumstance, whatever Night I had said would probably be right, but just not this time, this moment of television.
Right. And
I will say, I think I like season 4, at least this first half. We'll get into the distinction between the halves soon. But this first half of season 4 is probably some of my favorite My Hero moments. They're just kind of episode after episode after episode that really digs deep into a lot of side characters and just makes them a protagonist for an episode. And it is very impactful. This is where the show actually uses flashbacks well, because it's not stuff we had already seen as the audience. It's stuff that we are learning for the first time about certain characters.
right.
And they really tie that well with battle sequences and the push and pull of the hero and the villain fighting. And they do this like 5 times in a row, I shit you not, with a bunch of side characters, and then ramping our way up to the couple main characters that are in this fight. And everybody gets an episode, and I swear when the show cut to the credits at every episode, I was like nearly tearing up. It was like just pure optimism, wholesomeness, heroics that the show is all about. And they like keep knocking it out of the park episode after episode until they eventually beat this I'm not gonna say it's like a side villain, but he basically is a side villain, I guess, even though I like him more than all the other real villains, until they beat him and thwart the plan. So I really enjoyed that.
Can I make a few quick comments?
Sure.
Yes.
The first is that kind of sounds like season 6A of BoJack Horseman. I think it was 6A. Maybe it's 6B, actually. Yeah. I forget. One of them, it basically focused on one character per episode, as I recall.
Yeah, it is the first half of season 6. You're right.
And also, I recently heard about this show. Well, I heard about it before, but I didn't know about the production stuff behind this cartoon, Johnny Test. I'm too old for it, but I had a brother 5 years. Well, I have a brother 5 years younger than me that had it on sometimes on Cartoon Network, and it went through different production companies. And in the 6th season, so what they do in television animation is they do I think it's called hard poses instead of soft. So basically, it's like if a character goes from a smile to a frown, they're smiling, then the next frame they're frowning because it saves on animation cost. But what Johnny Test did was every time that a character would do that, they'd use a whiplash sound effect in the final season of the show. So if a character was like had their hand on their chin and then they put it down at their side or something, like the thing they're done, like, and it would do that for every character movement, which, as you can imagine, happens a lot. And there's 10-minute episodes, and there's counters on YouTube. One has 190 whip sound effects in a 10-minute episode, and you can discern the plot of the episode just by the compilation of the sound effects because they're so frequent. And this is relevant because I'm going to ask, with the frequency of flashbacks like you guys have mentioned, would you say that if someone was just to do a compilation of flashbacks, they could get the gist of the show's plot?
Yeah, I would say so.
Probably. It would be in a weird order because the flashbacks, it would also be in a weird repetitive order as well, because you'll get certain scenes like 10 times, and then you'll get like some other scenes once or twice, but 10 episodes after they actually happened. So I'm actually kind of very intrigued to see what that would look like.
Yeah, no, I could definitely see it.
But yeah, no, you probably could, Todd. Not gonna lie.
Oh yeah, that's all you gotta do is just get on like YouTube to go to some compilate. Yeah, I'm sure it could happen. Or
yeah, search like My Hero Academia flashback compilation.
Or My Hero Academia Deku crying, because he cries literally every episode, including flashbacks.
Yeah, Deku does cry a lot. He's very in touch with his emotions.
He is. It's nice. Like, Dylan and I are watching like Hunter x Hunter. We're like trying to get through that, and I was so worried about like doing this episode and everything and getting the two shows confused because the protagonists of both shows have like spiky like greenish hair, and
You're
they wear
right.
primarily green outfits. And I'm like, the only reason I can tell the difference between the two characters is that one cries significantly more than the other.
It's fair enough. He is dismantling toxic masculinity.
Oh yeah.
And he's
That's
ready
his
for
other
St.
superpower.
Patrick's Day.
What was that, Todd?
He's ready for St. Patrick's Day.
Yeah. Oh, St. Patty's Day is every day.
Absolutely. And basically they just celebrate St. Patrick's Day for the second half of season 4. That's very, very good transition. Kudos to me. Season 4 definitely becomes full high school anime again, and like in the filler kind of way for the second half of season 4, where they like spend 7 episodes doing a school concert prep, and at least tied into the main narrative because they are very much focused on trying to make the girl that they saved happy again. She's kind of like tortured and kidnapped, and made to feel like she's going to like kill everyone she ever meets. So that's nice. They make her feel better. But man, I think the show wanted to like show all the other characters that are in the show, but they didn't have a lot of stuff for them to do. So they were like, do a concert.
Yeah, they're like, oh, this is due tomorrow. Like, what do we do? Concert. Yeah, but no, it was I mean, it was fun. It was like a very like lighthearted kind of, especially after all of the, Eri, this girl was very tortured and very tormented, and you're like, oh, let's take her, make her happy, make her smile for the first time in life. Like, and I think that's a very sweet sentiment, especially on like their part. And she's able to like stay at the school like more long term and everything. That's very nice to see that she has like somewhere to go and somewhere to belong. And I guess with the concert, the one thing I thought was kind of weird, and the whole like they're doing this like school festival for the other half of the year, the whole Gentle Criminal and La Brava like tangent, I guess that's the best way I can describe it.
Yes.
Yeah, can you make sense of that? I wasn't really sure the whole, because I know he wanted to be remembered. He was like kind of like this petty basically like YouTuber who commits small scale crimes with his friend, and they're just kind of there, like they're pulling a prank or something. Like, what? I could, for the life of me, not understand what they were trying to do.
Yeah, I mean, ultimately they wanted to break into the school, but after they break into the school, not do anything? Really? Because breaking into the school would be worthy of remembrance on its own. I feel like kind of a weak plot, but the characters were just so outlandishly kind of funny to me. I warmed up to them a bit by the time it was all through. That being said, it is very much a kind of stark departure, I would say. This season really front loads its hype, and you get all jazzed up watching the first 13 or so episodes, and then you go to like stuff like this, and it's just kind of like whiplash. But I think in a bubble, some of these episodes would be better, really not watching them immediately after the earlier part of the season.
Right. I get what you're saying. Like, I'm looking on Wikipedia trying to figure out the plot to this, and it looks like they are searching for a scheme that will make him be remembered, and then they're calling it a prank on the Gentle plans for his next attack to serve as an alarm bell to all of society. So I'm not really sure. Like, it looks like they're just trying to play a prank to like encourage the students to be on guard at all times. Like, it just seemed like I was just
part of the thing was they didn't really have like a real legitimate plan, because they're not necessarily bad people. They kind of lost their way. Right. At least the Gentle Criminal villain.
Yeah.
But I think really the way his story kind of wraps up is this: he just had a lot of bad things happen to him in life, and he's basically going to be getting a second chance. So I think they're just trying to say in a long roundabout way through comic relief that there are second chances.
Yeah, and I can see that. Like, I do hope we see them again in the future, like in like season 5 or season whatever, and that they play like a more, I guess, like benevolent. Is that right? Is that the right word? You know?
Yeah, yeah,
positive.
they are.
Yeah, they have a
or the Justice League or something. I don't know.
Yeah.
There's some cool abilities, so if they use those abilities for good, that could be very helpful.
Yeah, because they go especially into like La Brava's like background and everything. Like her quirk is like love, you know, being able to like transfer like strength and stamina to like whoever she chooses, and that's pretty neat. Like that could be useful. And but I mean, outside of like their kind of like half-baked like plot, I'm like, is this going anywhere? I mean, I don't know. It's one of those things. Maybe I'm just being like fussy, but like, you know, you could take them out and it really wouldn't affect the rest of the season. Although we wouldn't see Hound Dog as much, and he's great.
Right? Is he the same voice actor as Bakugo? Because I swear he is just growling a little bit extra.
Yes.
Okay, good. Very much sounds like it.
Oh yeah. But
yeah, I mean the 4th season ends with some excitement again. With number 2 hero now being number 1 hero, not necessarily the best daddy. He's going to try to be a better person, gets his ass beat, but he reigns victorious against one of these Nomu bioweapons again. So we kind of get the stakes risen again for what's to come in season 5, I think.
Yeah, because I think this season sort of ends with the question, you know, is all hope lost, you know, without All Might? Like, who's going to step in and fill that role? Kind of after the hero, the great hero of the world is fault, you know? And they're trying to, like, be like him and emulate him. And it's even, like, during the fight sequence with Endeavor fighting that weird creature at the end, like, he was even trying to, like, strike a pose and strike a smile, like, very similar to All Might. So he's still, even though he's like very competitive with All Might, still trying to emulate him, and it's very interesting to kind of see that pressure to conform, because he's, you know, All Might during his time as a symbol piece has done such a good job of like molding and creating that symbol. It's kind of like in a lot of ways like the Captain America or the Superman of like this society. And you know, when, you know, Captain America like passes on his, you know, shield to Bucky, he passes the shield down, and you know, the different like iterations of Captain. It's very, very interesting.
Right. And I think they're gonna really explore that a lot more in season 5 and the legacy of being that hero, because it seems like they're going to be exploring who has had that power over the past several generations and all of that, which I'm pretty intrigued to see.
Oh yeah, same.
Yeah, I mean, so far that's My Hero Academia in a nutshell. It's whenever it's got a new season, it's a very fun show to watch, but it's also pretty feel good.
Oh yeah,
and it really scratches that superhero itch for me.
Oh yeah, and honestly, I would say I have very few like things that I, you know, truly dislike about the show. I say really the only thing that like genuinely bothers me is the whole like flashback within a flashback. It's like the Inception with flashbacks, but other than that, like I really 10 out of 10 would like recommend the show to like, of course, anybody. Hands down, like I would give this show like a solid like 9 or 10 to be honest.
Oh, absolutely. It's one of the strongest anime I think of the modern day. And it's a creative spin on superhero stuff, and enough that I've seen the Western stuff, the Marvel, the DC, the Image Comics. I think it's got a lot more different stuff to offer, just in the fact that it's an anime and it's got this high school structure and the world is very unique. That being said, yeah, I mean, I pretty much, my cons are Flashbackception and Mineta. Other than that, it was pretty great. He's not even around that much anymore. It's fine. He had like 5 lines in season 4, so let's keep that up.
Yeah, let's keep that way. Okay.
Right?
So Todd, sorry.
Yeah, no, Todd, tell us.
What do you want me to say?
Do you want to watch this show now, based on what we've said?
Oh, I would have to look at how the women on it appear. I have certain standards.
There are some smoking babes on My Hero, I will tell you that.
Oh, well, then I'm in.
One of them you can't even see.
That is true. There is an invisible girl, and it always makes me laugh just when she shows up, and it's just a shirt floating.
Not too interested in that one, but...
Yeah, dude, there are some babes. Zero Gravity girl. I actually surprised we didn't talk about her because she's kind of one of the main characters, but she doesn't. I really hope that she gets more to do in the future. Uraraka, she basically touches things and makes them have no gravity, which is very kind of useful and used in a lot of creative ways.
Oh yeah, because I know a lot of the fight sequences with her, like one of the biggest praises I have of the show as well is like just how they choreograph like the battles and how they incorporate the quirks into the environment, and like a lot of her stuff was just incredible, especially when during season, I think it was season 2, when she was fighting Bakugo, her spar with him was just it was very clever to sort of see how she used her environment to just fight him and whatnot. I mean, I won't tell you the outcome of the battle, Todd, but like a lot of her stuff is great, but overall, I don't know, she just didn't get used a whole lot, and I really like the relationship between like her and Deku, either like the like 3 best friends and whatnot, but and plus like Asui and her have like girl talk, and it's very cute, but like she's not around like a very wonderful like girl next door like wholesome character, and I hope, like you said, they do use her more in the future.
Right. There is also a girl that has to have a lot of cleavage showing because she pulls any object in existence out of her body. So I don't know if that's your thing, Todd, but that's also a character.
I don't understand. She holds any object out of her...
She can materialize anything. She just kind of pulls it out of her skin. I don't know how else to describe it. It is very bizarre. Like, she can just make anything. It's very overpowered. In my opinion, it's one of the most overpowered quirks in the whole world, the whole show. So who knows? But she's like not really a main character, but hopefully they do more stuff with her because that power is ridiculous.
Yeah, I think one of the like constraints is that she has to like understand the composition of the thing that she's creating. So that's why she has all those like random books and stuff that she pulls out of nowhere. Right,
which is like just the plot bullshit to make her not as overpowered, but like they could easily say, "Oh, she knows everything now. Now she can make anything." Yeah, so it's very much a suspension of disbelief there, but it's very overpowered.
Right.
Oh yeah, there's a lot of very tongue-in-cheek superpowers in this show. So if you ever, this show is very much kind of that soapbox or that sandbox where it's like, what if, electrifying yourself was a superpower? Well, there's a character who electrifies himself and becomes stupid. There's a lot of superpowers that are like beneficial, but also detrimental to the characters. Because they're really just mutations. They're kind of like the X-Men in this world. They're born with it. Maybe it's Maybelline for Deku, since he ingested an old man's hair. That's how he got the superpower, by the way. Todd, we left that part out.
Oh, well, I guess that was kind of self-explanatory.
I mean, how else are you going to adopt a superpower? I would rather ingest the hair than some other bodily functions.
Yeah, hard pass. Anyway, I guess that's all I got. You want to wrap up?
I just want to tell our audience to go beyond and plus ultra. Todd, will you go beyond?
What?
That's a good response. We asked if you would go beyond.
Oh, no.
No.
I'm no hero.
Very
No.
much middle of the road.
No, I would keep it, responsible.
Yeah. You're not going to go plus ultra. You can't handle it.
I'm totally plus ultra. I am Mori Crowley and I like to party.
And my name's Eric Zavinski. I will go beyond. We'll see you in the next episode of Too Cool for Anime Club.